Remember this?
Hey, Kool-Aid!
Oh, yeah!
It's the classic TV commercial for Kool-Aid, and now it's being copied in a destructive social media challenge.
Listen. I want to make something 100% clear to everybody out there in the audience, and even those of you who are not out there in the audience who won't even see this video. I am not in favor of crime. I'm not in favor of vandalism. I'm not in favor of this kind of juvenile behavior. That being said, if you are going to crime, if you are going to do property damage, I can at least ask for you to do it in such a way that it is hilarious enough for me to cover it on this channel. And this is exactly what we're going to talk about today, a viral trend that I have been seeing a bunch of different news segments on called the Kool-Aid Man Challenge. And for those of you who are unaware, for those of you who are uninitiated, the Kool-Aid Man is somebody who breaks through a wall in order to say, oh yeah, while he's doing so, in order to sell all the little children's on the Kool-Aid product, which is essentially red sugar water that is probably not good for an entire generation. That being said, these kids, these youths, these children's have decided to take up this challenge in real life, or IRL as the kids say, and bust through people's fences in a way that is both destructive but also incredibly comical. But again, I will give the asterisk, I will give the statement up front that I am not in favor of this at all whatsoever. It is no good. However, some of these videos are in fact hilarious, and this Inside Edition segment does nothing to nerf the desire to do this because it just makes it look hilarious. Now, we're gonna get into this, but before we do, I want to thank everybody who supports this channel via actualjusticewarrior.com/join.
Give me the money. Give me the money, okay?
It's being called the Kool-Aid Man Challenge. Ben Helwa lives on Staten Island, New York, and is the latest homeowner to have his property vandalized. They run full speed into your fence. They take the whole fence down.
Apparently this challenge went viral a few years ago, and I didn't really know that people were still actively doing it.
He didn't know what caused the damage until he screened surveillance video taken from across the street. It shows 3 youngsters running right through the fence.
So look, as we find out through the various segments that I will be cycling through throughout the course of this video, the people who are impacted by this challenge have to shell out thousands upon thousands of dollars in order to repair their fences. Oftentimes they do not have the money on hand, so you end up in a situation where it has a patchwork of different blocks and particle board and whatnot in order to prevent people from, being able to go onto their property, to prevent their pets from escaping, and all the consequences that are the result of having your fence run into by a bunch of teenagers. But again, I will point out that compared to the other trends that we see, like the knockout game and whatnot, this one has an element of comedy to it. But of course, this is brought to us by TikTok.com, our greatest social media platform for undermining American values, holding up figures like Osama bin Laden as a genius and a voice of a generation, and apparently for wanton property destruction like we saw right here, and it's just not acceptable behavior. And apparently this challenge is something like 3 years old, but it's re-emerged as of late, and as you can see on the video, which by the way is in fact hilarious, I do in fact laugh at this video, you always have one person hanging back in order to film it as the 2 idiots run full steam ahead straight through this fence and presumably yell oh yeah at the time that they're doing so. However, again, they are not bringing delicious Kool-Aids to the people on the other side of this. They are bringing only the destruction.
You can see they're getting themselves ready, right? They're pumping each other up. You can see the one kid actually runs ahead and gets his phone out. He's like, oh, I gotta film this, right?
Yeah, and boom.
As you can see, they really did a number on his fence. The damage is extensive, and the whole thing might need to be replaced. But as for now, he's got plywood and duct tape keeping it together.
Now again, this is just not a nice thing to do, and I know a lot of people might be thinking that this kind of destruction of property being caught on film might be related to some kind of civil rights protesting, something that is fiery but mostly peaceful, but I assure you there doesn't appear to be any political motivation involved in this at all whatsoever. This appears to be a bunch of dumb kids that are running full speed ahead through fences, and I can only imagine that at some point in time, there is going to be something on the other side of the fence that these kids are going to run into, and that is going to result in a serious injury or potential death. And again, this is also something that if you were to do it, in an area where people tend to own guns more, you might be mistaken for a burglar, and you actually could be shot for your trouble. So this is not something that I would recommend to any of the youths out there, any of the children's, any of the aspiring Kool-Aid men out there in this great country, because even though it does look hilarious from the surveillance video, it is quite destructive, it is quite ridiculous, and of course it is in fact dangerous, not just for yourself in terms of getting injured running through the fence, but in terms of if a property owner catches you, how they will react to this. And by the way, your reaction is going to be a little bit dulled because you might actually be concussed running through said fence.
We found lots of examples of knucklehead teens charging full speed into fences. These youngsters ran into the fence in unison, resulting in thousands of dollars in damages.
Okay, so I'm not an expert on surveillance video technology or anything of the sort. I'm not an expert on sound effects. However, I do edit on theinternet.com quite often, and it appears like that Inside Edition is going out of their way to add in crashing sound effects to amp up the comedy for this particular challenge. I don't believe that the same crumple fence sound effect applies to each and every one of these fences that they're running through, but for whatever reason, Inside Edition decided this segment where we're trying to warn kids away from running through walls, running through fences, we're gonna add in comedic sound effects because, we kind of are finding this pretty entertaining. We kind of are enjoying this just a little bit, so we're gonna amp this up, show you it a million times, show you how hilarious it looks, and then tell you at the end of the video not to do this, which honestly I find to be disgusting. I would never show you a bunch of kids running through fences, tell you how hilarious that I find it, and then say, hey kids, you don't do that, except for the fact that I'm doing that right now throughout the course of this video. But again, obviously this is not good behavior, it's not acceptable, I would not support it, I do not support it, and I think that you should be ashamed of yourselves, as the super mayor would say, shame on y'all.
Shame on y'all!
Because this is wildly inappropriate.
I was just in shock because, once again, these kids ran through the fence. They fled the scene. But, are the kids even okay?
So this guy cracks me up because he says he's completely in shock because, again, they ran through the fence and then they fled the scene, and he's like, how are they not severely injured? How are they not hurt? And this is where I would want to tell everybody out there in the audience that all those people who say the Marvel movies are fake and people would really get injured if they were to do stuff like this, it turns out you're just wrong. It turns out there is no injury risk at all whatsoever, apparently, from running through a solid wood fence or a solid one of those thick plastic fences, because apparently all of these kids have had full recoveries from their devastating injuries because they are aspiring Black Widowses and aspiring Daredevils, in my opinion, based on the scientific evidence as I see it right here. Now, of course, we'll have to wait for the autopsies to confirm whether or not they have CTE. I would assume that 99.999% of them actually do, and probably the compounding CTE is what's leading them to do this over and over again, because there is no way that on TikTok.com or on any of these social media sites, you're going to get anything other than views related to this. And if you get enough views during this particular challenge, I would assume that you're just going to get arrested for committing this crime. Because again, it is a crime. It is vandalism, to be clear. I'm sure some creative prosecutors could reinterpret this as some kind of burglary because you're forcibly entering. However, it does not appear that these kids are trying to steal. And a lot of times for burglary, you have to have the intent to steal, and it seems clear they're just trying to destroy.
Tonight, police on New York's Staten Island looking for the people in this surveillance video. 3 of them running full speed across the street and crashing through a fence, while a 4th appears to record them. And if their MO looks familiar to you,
Hey, Kool-Aid!
Yeah! You might be onto something. The homeowner with that destroyed fence says he believes the vandalism could be tied to a viral trend known as the Kool-Aid Man Challenge.
Now, of course, I wanted to also play you a different segment about this particular Staten Island home. This one comes from NBC News. And again, the way that they frame these segments, I can't help but laugh. I can't help but acknowledge the comedy in it, because they're like, yeah, a possible Kool-Aid Man situation, possibly related to this viral trend. Here are the kids running through the wall. Then we're going to cut to the commercial, and then we're going to cut to some random guy on a construction site doing the very same thing. And I will say, for everybody out there in the audience, if you happen to be remodeling your home, if you happen to be trying to take down a wall on your own property that you paid for, that is the appropriate instance for a Kool-Aid challenge. If you happen to be a construction worker and you're trying to have fun, considering all the nurses during COVID were messing around with desperately needed PPE, as we were told on the news, I think that is the acceptable instance of the Kool-Aid challenge. This particular guy right here, I'm totally fine with him. He's having a good time. He even did the oh yeah thing. And maybe, just maybe, the fact that he had such a good time and he was authorized to be there and authorized to take down that wall will dull the negative side effects of CTE from running through said wall.
There was a flashlight with the camera, so I believe they were recording a video.
In which participants do their best impression of those iconic Kool-Aid commercials that have been on the airwaves for decades. Oh, yeah! The trend first popularized in 2023, sometimes causing real damage.
Again, all of those instances that they showed where they're going through their own walls, totally fine with, totally acceptable. Going through people's fences, no, not into it.
Ran out back and saw, the fence just splattered.
Jody Viola's neighbors capturing a group throwing themselves through the slats and fleeing in 2023.
I think we were pretty shocked at how easily the fence exploded.
The loud crack of another fence buckling on New York's Long Island, even making an impression on a retired corrections officer.
That's when I heard the bang. It sounded like a gun go off.
His was just one in a string of 5 incidents in 2 months that led to multiple arrests. Now, the trend appears to be coming back in fashion, with police in New York fielding 3 reports in as many months. And it's not just New York.
Now look, like I said earlier on, it appears that this trend seems to be very common in the state of New York. Again, this happens to be a state where you have soft on crime criminal justice laws, but also you have very strict gun control. So these people are not in fear of the fact that they could be shot by the property owner. And again, even though each and every one of these videos is in fact hilarious, this is incredibly dangerous. It is incredibly destructive. And I do appreciate the local news showing us the good version of the trend, which is normal people doing it with stuff they own, but this is obviously the bad version. And by the way, there have been arrests made in these particular instances, and the reason for those arrests is obvious. If you're filming this to put it on social media and destroying people's fences that, again, are making police reports, you are very likely to be arrested for this.
Several incidents reported in Schererville, Indiana this month. One resident telling NBC News she's been targeted multiple times over the years, costing her $2,200 in damages. She says the teens look for PVC fencing because it easily pops off. The vandalism often happening at night, making it tough to identify perpetrators.
So yeah, it appears that the PVC fencing is what is being targeted. That's that plastic right there. And again, you actually have instances where people have been targeted multiple different times. And I just want to say, look, if you're going to do this crime, first of all, you should be arrested. You should be charged. But if you end up doing it, just one time is enough. Leave the lady alone. Stop making her repair her fence time and time again. But the funniest part about this NBC News segment is that they actually reached out to the Kool-Aid company in order to get a statement from them on this particular challenge, because I don't know if you guys are aware of this. They thought it might be good for you to know that the company behind Kool-Aid does not endorse this, unless they do endorse this, unless you thought there was a mystery, and maybe they're going to say that right here. But I got a pretty good guarantee without this added into the story that they probably don't endorse this behavior. They're probably going to be against you using their product and their mascot as a justification for vandalism around the state of New York. I don't know. Let's hear it, because NBC News decided to reach out. Maybe they're going to prove me wrong.
In a statement, Kool-Aid says it does not endorse the Kool-Aid Man Challenge. Writing in part, we kindly ask everyone to leave the breaking through walls to the Kool-Aid Man. Oh, yeah. And while the classic commercials remain a favorite for many kids and adults alike, the residents affected are not drinking that Kool-Aid.
Yeah, obviously the company Kool-Aid is not going to be in favor of this. Although I will point out that their statement is pretty bad. It's like, leave the breaking through walls to the Kool-Aid Man, but each and every one of these teenagers think they're the Kool-Aid Man, so that is obviously not going to deter anyone from doing anything. And again, I will point out that while this is entertaining, while this is hilarious, it is in fact something that is criminal. You could get hurt. It's not acceptable, and you need to stop doing it all over New York. I would hope that one day in my entire life, I would be able to afford a home, and maybe that home would actually have a fence, and it would really piss me off if a bunch of teenagers ended up running through said fence. And considering I'm up all the time and I'm always watching, I would come for you if you ever did that to my future home. But of course, I'm gonna leave this here. Obviously, it's a fun video, it's a fun segment. Everybody relax, everybody calm down. Not everything needs to be so serious, and I want to know your thoughts down in the comments below. As per usual, if you like the video, show them by leaving a like, subscribe for more content, follow me on the social media, support me via support links in the description of this video. This has been me talking about the Kool-Aid Man Challenge. Till next time.